The scripture, Srimad Bhagavadgita, is something that we have all heard of. It's one of the most popular and well known scriptures in the world. Therefore, people, whenever they have these type of dilemmas, or for that matter, any difficult times in life in general, they often turn to the Gita, hoping that just as the Gita could help Arjun, they'll also find a solution in the same scripture. And very often, even if they have not found a solution, at least they have found a lot of solace and have felt much more at peace.
अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदं माह महीपते.
And he continues that I see in all this that is going to happen an ill omen, or rather, plenty of ill omens. And then he says, what for? To get a kingdom? I don't want anything. Now, when you say, I don't want anything, again, it is the I part that is important. This also is the ego's voice. So, indirectly, one is also trying to say, I am so good that I don't want anything. You can put it that way. When the intellect is dominated by the emotional recoil and the inertia, it works, but it works in a way that it supports what we feel like doing. He doesn't want to fight, so it supports why he should not fight, without confessing that's because I'm lazy, because I'm tamasic. So that or tamas has, my tamas has come forwards, because we all have a bit of tamas and some rajas and sattva. So he also has that tamasic inertia, and that has come forwards. Uh, Now that is the paradox of the relationship between the emotional part of the being and the intellect. The intellect is supposed to moderate and govern our emotions so that we are not carried away by emotions. But the intellect is very often not able to play that role, because the emotions are so powerful that they can exploit the intellect. What
Namaste everyone and a warm welcome to all of you. It brings me great joy to begin our monthly series, Talks on the Gita, a space for reflection, inner clarity, and quiet spiritual companionship. Turning to the Gita is a privilege, an expression of the divine grace that makes us reach out to the Gita for our psycho-spiritual transformation. The Gita is a scripture that can be used with profit to guide our everyday life. It can help us go through tough times with minimum suffering, and it can handhold us from where we are to the point where our mind works the same way as that of the divine. Our consciousness merges with that of the divine. Man mana bhav, as Sri Krishna tells Arjuna. We are honored to have Dr. Ramesh Bijlani with us, a speaker, writer, and guide who has touched the hearts and lives of many seekers through his love, simplicity, and clarity. Thank you for choosing to be here, for taking this time for your inner journey. May today's session sow a gentle seed of understanding that grows month after month. With gratitude to the divine, let us begin. And with that, I invite Dr. Bijlani to guide us. Sir.
Thank you so well the series that we are starting today. The series is on the Gita, as you said, and the scripture, Srimad Bhagavadgita, is something that we have all heard of. It's one of the most popular and well known scriptures in the world. Uh, it's one of the most widely translated books, also, therefore. Uh, but at the same time, not many have read it from cover to cover. And those who have uh, often say that they have not understood, and it's only when they read it repeatedly that they keep understanding more and more of it. And therefore, I thought that this series would be relevant to many of us, and it's with that we are starting. For those who are absolutely new to it, let me just establish the context. The context is that of two armies facing each other, about to begin a war. And what is this war about? This war is about inheritance, inheritance of a kingdom. And who are the two who are fighting for this inheritance? Two sets of cousins. Cousins who, five cousins on one side, the Pandavas, who have been treated unfairly, and 100 brothers, the Kauravas, on the other side, who do not want to part even with five villages within that kingdom. That option has been given to them. So when the war becomes inevitable, they are all arrayed in the battlefield, facing each other, and it is there that the the message of the Gita, or the lesson of the Gita, begins. Who is the teacher and who is the student? The student is Arjun, the one who is leading the army of the Pandavas, and the teacher is the one who is driving his chariot, Sri Krishna, the divine himself. And that is the relationship between the human disciple and the divine teacher that constitutes the Srimad Bhagavadgita, or the Song of the Divine. Now, the student, the human disciple, is not an ordinary disciple. He is a disciple who uh, is well versed with the taboos and mores of the period. He knows what his duty is, but yet all the things that he knew, that have supported him and guided him through his life, prove inadequate. And at this point, he can't make up his mind whether to fight or not to fight. And that essentially is the beginning. But then, like a good teacher, the divine teacher doesn't just give him his verdict that he should fight. Instead, he gives this message, this lesson from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which takes him to the deeper aspects of this issue, and also gives a message which is rather generalizable. It is because it is generalizable that the Gita has had this popularity for more than 3,000 years since it was composed. And as we can see, the setting is that of a story. And to learn anything through a story is much easier than to learn it through abstract philosophy. That has been one reason why it has had a universal appeal. And the lesson, although very comprehensive, is given in just 700 verses of about 2 lines each. So the scripture is rather short. And therefore, it is not just short, the book sometimes has been published as very small sized pocket books. So it can be all condensed in the form of a pocket book. So it's, I should often call it, seductively small. Uh, then, along with that, what we find is that here the story is centered around a problem, a dilemma that Arjun has. Now, that sort of a dilemma, whether to fight or not to fight, although both seem to be right in their own way, that sort of a dilemma is something that not only Arjun faced, all of us face from time to time. For example, a working woman, whether to go and do her job, she may be a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, where her students or patients are waiting for her, or and or whether she should not go for work because her child is ill at home, whether to take care of the child, that also is important, that is also her duty. On the other hand, there are students or patients waiting for her, and that also is her duty. So how to solve this issue? Now, that is the type of dilemma that Arjun had, because fighting and not fighting both could be proved the right thing to do in their own way. So therefore, people, whenever they have these type of dilemmas, or for that matter, any difficult times in life in general, they often turn to the Gita, hoping that just as the Gita could help Arjun, they'll also find a solution in the same scripture. And very often, even if they have not found a solution, at least they have found a lot of solace and have felt much more at peace. Sri Aurobindo has given us yet one more reason why the Gita has this universal appeal. And the reason is that in any scripture or guide, we find that there is a lot that is of moral value. That is, it was perfectly valid at the time when it was composed, at the place where it was composed, but with passage of time and change of place, many of the things that said there may no longer hold or may not be appropriate. But that doesn't apply to the Gita. In the Gita, we find that the temporal aspect is very small and much of it is of perennial, everlasting value. And that is what accounts for the universal appeal of the Gita. So, with that little introduction, I'll now go to the PowerPoint. So, today we'll be talking about the first chapter of the Gita. And the title I'm going to this session is I Want Neither Victory Nor the Kingdom. Now, if one were to just listen to this sentence, which we have in the title, one would say, what a nice man. Huh? He has overcome all, no desire for victory and no desire for the kingdom. And if the teacher happens to the divine, he'll give him a pat on the back and tell him, what a wonderful boy you are, what a wonderful student I have. Huh? But then let's see what actually happens. I've dedicated this series of talks to my mother. Uh, and Here you see my parents, both my parents here. This picture was taken around 1960 when they were quite young, and I was just a boy of 13. And the reason is particularly that it was in her lap that I got my first exposure to the Gita in her voice. At least her memories of being around 3, when every day after having her bath, she would read a few pages from the Gita. I would be in her lap or sitting very near her, and the it was read in the Sindhi language and my mother tongue. And then, one of the things that I enjoyed was not only the what I heard, but also the fact that every time there was a chapter where chapter came to a close, she knew that today this chapter will come to a close. I would also get some prasad. So those are the memories that I have. And where did all this happen? What was the scene of that action? The scene was a small little house in Old Delhi, uh, near Ajmeri Gate, uh, where we had just one little room which could be called a room, and the rest had either a little shed or was completely open, and everything was compressed within that shed and that little open area. That room served as everything for which you needed a room, whether it was a bedroom or a study. And there was no pakka floor, there was no electric supply, there was no water supply. Uh, Now, but in spite of that, what I think kept us happy was one that there was a great deal of love and cooperation and understanding within the family. And it has been seen repeatedly that when you have that in the family, then it can overcome all physical limitations. The child can still grow up quite well. And along with that, I think what helps that is the faith. And the faith that she had in the Gita, and she would read it religiously every day after having a bath. Uh, she departed from this world on the 29th of November 2009. So this is the anniversary of her leaving this world. Not only that, that year it was Mokshada Ekadashi. And this year, Mokshada Ekadashi is on the 1st of December, on Monday, not too far away. And then the same date, that is the 1st of or Mokshada Ekadashi, also happens to be the Gita Jayanti. So all these coincidences coming together may be taken as the approval of the divine for the series that we are starting, or one may just call them trivial coincidences. Take it as you may, but all the same, I thought I'll just share all these with you before we go further. Sri Aurobindo has taken deep interest in the Gita, and in fact, his integral yoga leans very heavily on the Gita. His commentary on the Gita, which is on the Gita, stands out among all commentaries, and this is because he did not have to read the Gita like a philosopher and analyze it. Experienced the Gita. When he was in prison for 1 year, he saw Sri Krishna. He saw Sri Krishna in everything around him and in everybody. And she saw Sri Krishna's hand behind everything that was happening. And he had a dialogue with Sri Krishna and asked him his dilemma. He had a dilemma similar to that of Arjun, whether to continue with the freedom struggle or was there something else that was expected of him. And therefore, he lived the Gita, he experienced the Gita, he experienced the way the divine responds to this type of a dilemma. And perhaps that is why his commentary on the Gita stands out. Most of the commentaries on the Gita tend to be rather one sided, reflecting the bias of the commentator. It is his commentary in the essays on the Gita that looks at the whole Gita in one sweep. What is it that the Gita as a whole is trying to say? That's not what I'll get into in greater detail today, but this is not just my feeling, uh, although I've read a few other commentaries, but that of many others who have read and understood essays on the Gita and have also read several other commentaries on the Gita. In fact, one can say essays on the Gita is the Gita itself. It's another Gita in itself, and in some ways goes beyond the Gita. It has 48 chapters. It's not succinct like the Gita itself. It's about 500 pages of beautiful prose. The original of it was written in the English language. Uh, Now, what Sri Aurobindo has done is in these 48 chapters, maintained roughly important, the same sequence as in the Gita, as in the chapters of the Gita. But he has taken full liberty to keep going back and forth so that each of these 48 essays is a lucid essay that can stand on its own. And that is how it started. It started as a series of articles in the Arya. So in every issue, every month after month, there was one of these chapters, and later on, all these 48 essays were put together in a book, in the form of a book, in the same sequence as they had appeared in the Arya, and that is how we got essays on the Gita. So each of these essays is standalone, and Sri Aurobindo has taken this liberty to go back and forth, bring out what he's trying to say as clearly as possible rather than sticking to each chapter and going verse after verse. Uh, we will deviate from this partly because doing those 48 chapters will take much longer than to do 18 chapters of the Gita, partly because still people want to know what is it that the Gita says and in what sequence. So uh, while keeping in mind what Sri Aurobindo has said in essays on the Gita, we'll go chapter by chapter, and God willing, we will be able to reach the 18th chapter in, if not 18, at least in 20 months or so. Along with that, I put the cover of another book, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, this is something which has the original in Sanskrit, the English translation of each verse in the words of Sri Aurobindo, and then following that, selections from the passages from Sri Aurobindo's works which are most relevant to that particular shloka or verse. And this compilation has been done, this particular compilation has been made in this way by Parmeshwari Khaitan, one of the disciples in Rajasthan, and it's been published by the Jhunjhunu Center of Sri Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo Society. Now, here, the commentary in this particular book is mostly from the essays on the Gita, passages from the essays on the Gita, but there are a few from other works of Sri Aurobindo, the Synthesis of Yoga, the Life Divine, etc., and also a few passages by the mother. There are a few other such compilations too, but I have not read them. This is the one I have read, and it is really good. So, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the holy song of God. Now, Srimad, is a respectful prefix. Shri means, is used more as an adjective for all the qualities of abundance, beauty, power, virtues, everything that you associate with the divine. So, uh, anyone who has those qualities is given this prefix Shri. So, in fact, it's a much better prefix than Mr. Hmm. It conveys all these qualities. And it's used also particularly as a prefix for the spiritual masters like Sri Aurobindo or Sri Ramakrishna and so on. Then, it's also used as a prefix for scriptures. So, in a way, you can say something like just the way we say the Holy Bible, the same way Srimad. And Gita just means a song. And in fact, there are more than 60 Gitas. Each of them, or at least most of them, it is someone giving a lesson to a disciple. But when we say just the Gita, generally we mean the Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad means uh, belonging to God or of God. So, in a way, we can say, if we translate Srimad as holy, that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the holy song of God. It has 18 chapters and 700 verses. So, today we'll be dealing with the first chapter. I've already given partly the context of the scripture, uh, but one might say, was the war really inevitable? Because many legends which come from, because Sri Gita was inserted in the Mahabharata. It was inserted later or it was a part of the Mahabharata right from the beginning. That is a controversy which we need not get into. Uh, doesn't doesn't have any practical implications. But what is important is that the war did happen, and in that legend also we find some of the precipitating factors for the war. Did the war happen because Draupadi called Duryodhan blind, the son of the blind being a blind person? Was it? Did it happen because Duryodhan was evil and greedy and he didn't want to part with even 5 villages? Did it happen because uh, Yudhishthir was tempted to play the game of dice? Did it happen because Kauravas had on their side Shakuni, who was extremely tricky and also a cheat and could cheat in the game of dice and defeat Yudhishthir? Could Yudhishthir have at least learned a lesson after losing a few games and not gone to the point where he lost everything? And then the war may not have happened. Could they have just given up the kingdom and settled for something else, become sort of entrepreneurs, as we might say in the ordinary language, forget the kingdom and become a big businessman? Could they have done that? Now, these are all questions which we can ask. But these are all questions you see at the mental level. What we forget sometimes is that the logic of the divine is very different from our logic. In fact, one can say that all these whom we blame for the war, if they had not been there, there would have been perhaps no war, but then there would have been no Gita either. So we would not have got the scripture if there had been no war. And of course, the larger purpose, as Sri Aurobindo says, of the divine itself appearing in human form, as Sri Krishna did, was not just to win this war. For that, he could have just sent a warrior like Arjun, and Arjun could have then he could have made Arjun win. The real purpose of an avatar is to take the human race to the next leap in evolution. And that is what Sri Krishna came to do. So that was the real purpose. And without this cleansing that happened and establishing the victory of good over evil, without this, perhaps uh, this leap in evolution would not have been possible. So instead of arguing about the mental level, whether the war was inevitable, whether it was fair, and so on and so forth, we can just turn to the mother and see what she has said here. Do not be sad. Do not be sad irrespective of what has happened. Things happen because they have to happen. And finally, everything leads to the ultimate victory of the Supreme. And that is what happens in the Gita. And we'll turn to this again when we come to the 18th chapter and we find that to a great extent, this in fact has the essence of the Mahavakya of the Gita. Do not be sad. Things happen because they have to happen. And finally, everything leads to the ultimate victory of the Supreme. So now I pass on to Richa to start with the first shloka or verse of
Mm,
the Bhagavad Gita.
thank you, sir. Shri Paramatmane Namaha. अथ प्रथमोऽध्यायः धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय सञ्जय उवाच दृष्ट्वा तु पाण्डवानीकम् व्यूढं दुर्योधनस्तदा आचार्यम् उपसङ्गम्य राजा वचनमब्रवीत् पश्यैतां पाण्डुपुत्राणाम् आचार्यमहतीं च मूम् व्यूढां द्रुपदपुत्रेण तव शिष्येण धीमता.
So in these three verses, Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kauravas, uh, who was, so to say, in this war, the bad guys, uh, the father wants to know what is going on in the battlefield. He's blind, he's not present in the battlefield, but he wants to know. And he requests Sanjay to tell him what is going on there. As Sanjay starts his commentary with what Duryodhan speaks to his acharya, his teacher, Drona. Now, Dhritarashtra uh, wants to know, and Sanjay is telling him, although they are far away from the battlefield, how could this be? Was there something like a television which was telecasting everything that was going on? We do not know. But all the same, uh, it this is how the scripture begins. And the first thing that Duryodhan tells his teacher, uh, Dronacharya, is that the army that we are facing is led by your wise disciple. Now, there is a little bit of sarcasm in this because the teacher for both the Kauravas and Pandavas were the same. In childhood, they studied from the same teacher, Dronacharya, and Arjun was a favorite disciple of Dronacharya. So he's telling him, here, see, I'm facing an army which is led by your wise disciple, and there is a streak of sarcasm there. Then, Duryodhan starts describing the army of the Pandavas from the fourth shloka onwards. And there are a great number of warriors there. And he uses, while describing them, terms such as strong, foremost among the men, and great warriors. And you can see he uses no derogatory term for them. So you can see even in evil kings like Duryodhan had this much decency not to use any derogatory term for any of the people in the army that he was facing. And for Arjun, again, he didn't use really a derogatory term, although there was a bit of a sarcasm implied in calling him Dronacharya's uh, wise disciple. Then Duryodhan starts describing his own army. And then he makes a comparison. He says that our army is unseizable because it is guarded by Bhishma. And then he calls upon his army to guard Bhishma because Bhishma's presence is important. Otherwise, he feels that he may lose. The fact that his army is unseizable is because of Bhishma. So you can see here is that irony. Bhishma is able to guard the entire army and make it unseizable. On the other hand, Bhishma himself needs to be guarded. You have to guard the leader so that he can guard the rest of the army. Well, anyway, whatever it implies, but you can see that is exactly what he says. And but then he says the Pandava army is seizable because it is guarded by Bhima. So the leader of the other team, he was Arjun, but it was guarded by Bhima, and therefore he says that Bhima is not as powerful as Bhishma. Bhishma was the grandsire, Pitamah, the great grandfather. So since he is guarding their army, he feels that that is unseizable. So he's sure that we are going to win because we have Bhishma on our side, and that makes the army unseizable. Now, to announce the beginning of the war, Bhishma blows his conch, and the other soldiers follow with drums and horns, and they blow their own conchs, Krishna and Arjuna, that shank, the typical, uh, shell of a mollusk. And that is what they all and the leaders blow, and then others follow with all types of drums and horns and various types of instruments. And many of these instruments have been named in these verses, and the result is that the earth and the sky are filled with sound. So to have something like a band in an army is something not new. Yeah? It probably fills the soldiers with great enthusiasm and that uh, vitality which they need to be able to perform something as horrendous as a war and start killing the people on the other side. They need to be charged with that sort of vitality, and the band contributes to it. So here you can see the uh, see Arjuna and the divine charioteer Sri Krishna blowing these shells, and now you can expect that now that all this sound has been created to announce the beginning of the war, the next thing that will happen will be that the war will begin. But then instead something else happened. The war does not begin. And war does not begin because of what Arjun suddenly realized. Now, what you have to see is that imagine yourself in the position of Arjun. Here he is a person with a great deal of compassion, and he finds that uh, the two armies are essentially that are opposing each other, have a large number of people who are closely related to each other. They have spent long periods in their childhood and youth together. They've interacted in many ways, and they are sort of our own people. And among them are also the seniors and the elders and the teachers and so on. And then he starts having second thoughts: is the war really worth it? And then you also have to appreciate that if this type of feeling, this type of diffidence overcomes him, and he does not actually start fighting, the other army does not take any undue advantage of it. It's not that they start the war, which means that the war was there, but then there were some rules that governed it. They were being fair as far as possible. So the other side does not start the war. So the war does not happen till the lesson of the Gita is over, and Arjun also is willing to fight. Now, once again, we turn to Richa.
अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदम् आह महीपते अर्जुन उवाच सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युत यावदेतान्निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्य अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे योत्स्यमानानवेक्षेऽहं य एतेऽत्र समागताः धार्तराष्ट्रस्य दुर्बुद्धेर्युद्धे प्रियचिकीर्षवः.
So, what Arjun requests Sri Krishna to do is to place the chariot between the two armies so that he can see. So, Arjun, whose banner had the emblem of Hanuman, one thing it indicates is that Ramayana antedates Mahabharata, or Sri Rama as an avatar came before Sri Krishna as an avatar. And it also indicates that having Hanuman on the emblem, as the emblem on the banner, means that Hanuman, of course, was very powerful. So Arjun wanted to have as an emblem a deity who was very powerful. But then Hanuman was also a great devotee. And these are two qualities which Arjun also eventually comes to embody, both the power and great deal of devotion. Uh, so he does pick up the bow to start fighting, but then he requests Sri Krishna to station the chariot between the two armies. And in this particular section, when he requests Sri Krishna, the name used for Sri Krishna is Achyuta. Now, Achyuta means the one who is faultless, the one who never falters, the one who's infallible. And that is the divine. So Arjun, in a way, already knows that he has all the characteristics of the divine, at least, although he may not have known that he is the divine. He was treating him as a friend, but all the same, he knew his qualities, that he is infallible, he never falters, जो कभी चूकता नहीं है. So that is Achyuta. Now, wants to look at those. And why did he want that? Because he wanted to look at those who have come to support the evil minded son of Dhritarashtra. And that was Duryodhan. Now, you can see that Duryodhan did not use any derogatory term while describing the Pandavas or their army. But Arjun does use at least a mildly derogatory term, evil minded son of Dhritarashtra. That's interesting. And that is again something will Sri Krishna will help him get rid of this type of a judgment. Then in the verses that follow, the chariot is actually taken to a spot between the two armies. Sri Krishna does that. And then when he looks at the armies on both sides and finds that on both sides are his kinsmen, he is overwhelmed with sadness, pity, and dejection.
दृष्ट्वेमं अर्जुन उवाच दृष्ट्वेमं स्वजनं कृष्ण युयुत्सुं समुपस्थितं सीदन्ति मम गात्राणि मुखं च परिशुष्यति वेपथुश्च शरीरे मे रोमहर्षश्च जायते गाण्डीवं स्नसते हस्तात् त्वक्चैव परिदह्यते न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमतीव च मे मनः.
Now he's feeling that compassion and realizing that the war will involve killing kinsmen, each one of them killing each other, and in that process, killing one's own kinsmen. Uh, then this type of a at the same time, once you are in the battlefield and the battle has been announced, you feel, is it too late to prevent this destruction? So this type of a conflict creates a great deal of anxiety as well as urgency, and he doesn't really know what to do because one feels as if one has been dragged into that tragedy. It is inevitable, and yet one doesn't want to do it. And one feels that, well, maybe it is still not too late because the war has not yet begun. So, he's in that sort of a state. Now, this is an extremely anxious state. And this type of psychological state has physical manifestations. And that is what he describes in these verses. He says that my mouth has become dry, my body is quivering, my hair are standing on end, my skin is burning, my limbs are failing, my limbs are feeling so weak, I cannot stand. The bow is slipping from my hands, feet, legs, everything, is as if getting paralyzed. My mind is whirling. I can't think clearly. I'm thoroughly confused. In fact, this is exactly the type of things that you describe in textbooks of physiology when you're talking about the sympathetic overdrive. Sympathetic is the nervous system is called sympathetic because it sympathizes with us. It does what is good for us. What would be sympathetic towards us when we are in a in an emergency, when we are threatened. So it's a response to fear and anxiety and worry, and it's an acute response. That's when the sympathetic system is active, and some of these things and many others that happen help us in facing that situation. They are appropriate for that situation. And in fact, in my textbook of physiology, you find this at that place where the sympathetic nervous system has been described. So these are signs of sympathetic overdrive, and you can see Arjun, the facial expression in this picture is so meaningful, exactly how he's feeling. The dry mouth and the paralyzed limbs and a thoroughly confused intellect. And he continues that I see in all this that is going to happen an ill omen, or rather, plenty of ill omens. And then he says, what for? To get a kingdom? I don't want anything. Now, when you say, I don't want anything, again, it is the I part that is important. This also is the ego's voice. So, indirectly, one is also trying to say, I am so good that I don't want anything. You can put it that way. Now, when he says that I don't want anything, and I'm so good because I don't want anything, he's thinking about it in personal terms. But he was not here there as an individual, gain a kingdom. He belonged to a class of people who, in those days, had the type of temperament and training which equipped them to fight. And it's not that they had to fight all the time, but they had to fight whenever it was necessary to defend good against evil, to defend justice against injustice. And that is why he was there. So he forgot that he was not there as an individual and just say that since I don't want anything, I am so good, I will not fight. So what happened to that duty which had brought him there to the battlefield as a Kshatriya? Kshatriyas were the class of people whose duty it was to uh, fight if necessary, if inevitable, to defend good against evil, to defend justice against injustice. That is why he was there. Which and I can continue.
एतान्न हन्तुमिच्छामि न तोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य हेतुः किं नु मही कृते.
So Arjun continues. He says, I don't mind if I'm slain. I don't want anything. I'm so good. I don't mind if I'm slain. I don't mind dying. So I'm so good that I'm even ready to die. I don't want to slay even for the kingdom of the three worlds. I don't want the kingdom. Hmm? So now he's clarifying that I don't want anything. I don't want the kingdom. And I'm even willing to die. So, uh, the ego asserting itself, I'm so good. Uh, and then, begins rationalization. He says that if I fight this war, it will not make me happy. So now he's also saying that why I don't want to fight is also because this will not really make me happy. Getting the kingdom or winning the war will not make me happy. They don't see it, which means Duryodhana and his army and all those who are on Duryodhana's side, the Kauravas, they don't see it. But then I do. In a way, again, the ego speaking, I'm better than they are. I can see what is wrong with fighting. They don't see it. That's why they are here to fight. And then begins a sort of rationalization, which is very well known. But then you can see how he is just going from one point to the other, that it will lead to annihilation of the family because so many of our kinsmen will die. But then, if the family dies, with the family dies also the dharma which they have upheld. Dharma, is in the sense of right and wrong, and that has great importance in the Sanatana Dharma tradition, the sense of right and wrong. And that will lead to collapse of dharma, collapse of dharma within the family. Within the family, dharma is destroyed, and if dharma is destroyed, women of the family are corrupted. Poor women. Again, it's the women who are corrupted, as if the men will not be corrupted by the collapse of dharma. The poor women are being blamed, and it is because of women are corrupted that will be a confusion of varnas. That means there will be marriages or sexual relationships amongst people who are from different varnas. So again, that will be the fault of women. It's because the women are corrupted that will be this confusion. So the poor woman, she has always been, whether it is the Homer's Odyssey or whether it is the Bhagavad Gita, you find that little sort of streak of women being at the receiving end. Uh, so there'll be a confusion of varnas. And what will be the result? The family will go to hell because they have not upheld dharma. They will be punished by being sent to hell. The ancestors will fall. The ancestors will also lose their glory because their descendants have failed them. And then comes the generalization. Just because it will happen to this particular family, the dharma of the human race itself will be destroyed. So, generalization, widening the scope of the evil that will follow the war. And then he says, thus have we heard, which means that now he's taking recourse to the support from authorities. Very often to prove our point, we quote somebody, such and such great person has said it. That is, quoting from somebody whom we trust, some wise person. So we feel that the testimony now will support my point of view. So here he's quoting, thus have we heard. So you can see that he starts with an emotional recoil because his emotional recoil is because he feels that overtaken by a sense of uh, depression, sadness, and he feels that, well, this battle is not really worth it for the sake of the kingdom. And therefore, and then, there's always also the tamasic inertia. Not doing something has a certain sort of brings a certain relief because after all war is not a pleasant or ordinary activity. It's a activity which will be very taxing. So tamasic inertia comes in, and tamas is not only about laziness, it's also about bewildered thinking because of ignorance. And his thinking has been bewildered because when you are in that type of state, we can't think clearly. Already says my head is whirling. So emotional recoil and tamasic inertia, they are there, but all the same, being an intelligent person, eventually the intellect does take over. And when the intellect is dominated by the emotional recoil and the inertia, it works, but it works in a way that it supports what we feel like doing. He doesn't want to fight, so it supports why he should not fight. And it supports him without confessing that's because I'm lazy, because I'm tamasic. So that or my tamas has come forwards because we all have a bit of tamas and some rajas and sattva. So he also has that tamasic inertia, and that has come forwards. Uh, Now, that is the paradox of the relationship between the emotional part of the being and the intellect. The intellect is supposed to moderate and govern our emotions so that we are not carried away by emotions. But the intellect is very often not able to play that role. It's not able to play that role because the emotions are so powerful that they can exploit the intellect. What this exploitation means is that the intellect can be made to invent reasons which justify what we want to do at the emotional level. Because intellect is very versatile. It can look at the same issue from several angles. And while that is a strength, that strength becomes a weakness in those situations where it ends up supporting the emotional part of the being, even when it should not. It should, in fact, be helping us not getting uh, strayed by the emotions, not getting carried away by the heart. That's why it is wise sage advice is don't get carried away by the heart, use your head. But then the head, instead of guiding and moderating and putting the person on the right path, instead of getting carried away, the intellect very often gets exploited because the emotions are very powerful. And that's what has happened here. Arjuna has found a great deal of number of reasons why he should not fight. It will not make me happy. I don't care for the kingdom. And not only the family will be destroyed, dharma will be destroyed. And then it generalizes is to widen the scope. The dharma of the human race will be destroyed. And then in all of it, he has quoted testimony in to support himself. So we have heard. It means some authoritative people have said so.
अहो बत महत्पापं कर्तुं व्यवसिता वयं यद्राज्यसुखलोभेन हन्तुं स्वजनमुद्यताः यदि माम प्रतीकारम् अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धार्तराष्ट्रारणे हन्युं तन्मे क्षेमतरं भवेत्.
So then Arjun continues and winds up his arguments. Uh, he says that we have committed a great sin by coming to the battlefield, but then still there is time. Let's save ourselves before it is too late. And then he says it is more for me than the Kauravas. He confesses that the Kauravas may not understand all this, but since I understand it, if it's for my own peace of mind, for my own satisfaction, uh, to save myself from this sin, let us not fight. And if they still want to fight and they kill me, I'm ready to die. Let them slay me.
सञ्जय उवाच एवमुक्त्वार्जुनः सङ्ख्ये रथोपस्थ उपाविशत् विसृज्य सशरं चापं शोकसंविघ्नमानसः.
So after saying all this, he sat down, and naturally, that sitting down implied that I won't fight.
ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीता सूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे अर्जुनविषादयोगो नाम प्रथमोऽध्यायः.
So the Bhagavad Gita, which is like an Upanishad and gives us the Brahma Vidya through the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjun, of that scripture, this is the end of the first chapter, and this chapter has been named Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which means the uh, that yoga which is because of Arjun's dejection, uh, which means that this dejection is the trigger, the starting point for yoga. So when things don't go well, even when we are confused, when a person who is otherwise well versed and knew how to live and could guide his life well, when he is in this sort of a dilemma and gets dejected like this, when he's confused like this, that itself can also be the beginning of a yoga. So this is the beginning of Arjun's Vishada Yoga. So he sat down and said, I won't fight. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making this session possible. And thank you all for being there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And thank you, dear participants, for being a part of this divine journey. And we hope that this felt very enriching to each one of us. If you have any questions, you may put them in the chat box. And we will also be doing an exclusive Q&A session every now and then. So if whenever you find any questions, you can save them, and we will be taking all your queries and questions. In the meanwhile, if you have any reflections, any thoughts that you would like to share with us, you may feel free to do that.
Um, Thank you. I can I have put a question? My question is, like an ordinary person, when you take up a new project, we do a thorough analysis whether to do, and if I do this, what will be the benefits, what will be the losses. So why? I mean, before the war started, why didn't Arjuna and even Sri Krishna and all other did that kind of analysis? And why on the spot, on the war ground, all those thoughts came to Arjuna's mind?
Okay, that's a great question, ma'am. I have noted it down and I will
Okay.
share it with Dr. Bijlani when he's back.
Yeah,
He
and
might.
please convey my tribute to
Mm,
Dr.
mm,
Vijnana's mother for her
mm.
Mahaprayana Divasa.
Okay, sir is back. And sir, would you like to take questions?
Yes, sure. I think Ojaswini
So,
has asked a question, isn't
yes.
it?
So her question was just like an ordinary person, we before embarking on a new project, we think 100 times. So, why would someone like Arjun, who might be extremely more intelligent than us, did not engage in an analysis beforehand, and why on the spot of the war ground did he think about all of that? Yes, I hope I was able to convey your question well, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, that's a very good question. And again, the answer remains that uh, when something has to happen, then even the wisest people may not find the best of guidance uh, coming to them. Or, in a way, it is because the highest guidance comes to them that their own ordinary uh, thinking is sort of suspended. So the war had to happen, as we saw in the beginning in that quotation by the mother, that if things
Yeah.
have to happen, they will happen. And uh, it's eventually because that is how it will lead to the divine will prevailing, the will of the Supreme manifesting. You see, our
Thank you, sir.
intellect generally is not able to rationalize so many things, why they happen. We can see them only in retrospect. Thank you, Jaswini. Nice to have you there.
And sir, my sincere pranam to your mother. She must be very, very lovely, and you are the proof that how lovely she might be.
Thank you, sweet child.
So, sir, you have more questions. Shall I read them? Yes. So there's one by Mac. It says, how to navigate when two dharmas collide.
Is that actually the question which has been finally answered in the last chapter of the Gita?
Okay.
Uh, when two dharmas collide, then after taking him through a lot of arguments and philosophy and everything, finally, when Sri Krishna has reaches the last chapter, he tells Arjun, "You can forget all those dharmas, including those which are clashing with each other. Forget all the dharmas. Just do what I am saying." Sarvadharman paritejya mamekam sharanam braja. But that is the Mahavakya of the Gita. And as I keep saying, that that is both a uh, final guide and also uh, it is a dangerous doctrine. It's dangerous because then, we can say, I have the divine, and uh, therefore I can do what I want. I need not follow any dharma. So that's what makes it dangerous. So what we have to see is that that comes towards the end of the Gita, and which means that we are entitled to that type of freedom to forget all dharmas and do what we think our inner guide, our soul, or Sri Krishna is telling us after we have mastered the first 17 chapters.
So Dr. Srividya has asked that in the case of Arjun, being a Kshatriya was his duty, and that was clear. In our case, what is the barometer for discerning what is our duty? There can be many perspectives to what is our duty.
Yes, there is a wide variety of duties, and that's why the type of conflict that Arjun had, we can also have, like social duty, moral duty, professional duty, family duty, patriotic duty. Mm. And two or more than two of these duties can come in conflict with each other. Because even now there is no there are situations in which young people are sent to go and fight a war without knowing why they are being sent clearly, and fighting people against whom they have nothing. Uh, but at the same time, it is considered that patriotic duty to go and fight the war. So the conflict between different types of duties is not new, and that is why uh, you know the scripture helps us that in seeing that more important than any of these duties, family duty, moral duty, patriotic duty, social duty, more important than these is the divine duty. That is the duty that the divine expects of us. Also in case of Sri Aurobindo, fighting for the freedom of the country was a very noble task. But then what he was told was that no, that is not what you are supposed to do. That is good, and it will happen. The country will be free, but then your duty is to, your dharma is to uh, wake up the country and to provide to the entire world that wisdom which only you can give. That was his dharma. Similarly, for an ordinary person, the important thing may be to take care of the family. But then for Lord Buddha, it was his dharma to abandon the family and go away because he was meant for something else. Swami Vivekananda, again, uh, for an ordinary person in the fitness of things, after his father passed away and the family was going through difficult times, it might have been more appropriate to take care of the family. But then the divine guided him in its own mysterious ways to tell him that no, that will be taken care of on its own. You don't have to worry. You are meant for something else.
So there are many nice comments about the session today. And anyone would like to share any reflection? Or else we'll wrap. I just wanted to tell all participants that this video has been recorded and it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So there's one last question. Mac had again asked, how do we accept whatever happens has to happen? We commit such sins and blunders that it becomes difficult to find the will to live sometimes.
That's again a good question, because sometimes things happen because that is the way the divine will can manifest. Without that, it would not happen. But sometimes things do happen because of the mistakes that we make, or because the so-called sins. Sin means essentially that we did not pay heed to what our divine essence, the soul, was trying to tell us. Because either we got tempted by something which was emotionally very attractive, or we got tempted by material profit, or we got tempted by some other material gain, or something like that. So something happened and we deviated from it. So things happen because of that too. Uh, but then, uh, no matter how it happened, if it gets us into trouble, if it leads to sorrow and suffering, then a formula better than acceptance, better than accepting it as an expression of the divine will, is yet to be invented. To put us at peace, uh, the best formula, the uh, formula that has served us well, which we find in all traditions, is that I surrender to your will. Thine will be done. Jo Prabhu Ichha, inshallah. So in all traditions, you find the same thing expressed, because a formula better than this, better than accept, because it has happened. You can't undo what has happened. Nobody can change the past. It has happened. So the first step is to accept it as a part of the divine will of the one who is all powerful. But then one can go two steps further. Next step that we can go to is that we are surrendering not only to the divine will, we are also surrendering to divine wisdom. Because the divine is not only all knowing, it is also, sorry, the divine is not only all powerful and therefore can do anything, the divine is also all knowing. And therefore, in what has happened, if we see that eventually something good will emerge, although we can't see it, then the divine does not look like a dictator who can do what he likes, and therefore we have to accept, we have no other choice. Then we know that the divine, if it is the expression of the divine will, it is also the expression of the divine wisdom. And if in all his supreme wisdom he has made this happen, there must be something good about it. We can go one level further, the third level, and the third level is of surrender is that I surrender to the divine will and wisdom. And although I do not know everything that may be good about what has happened, but I also know at least one thing good about what has happened. And what is that one thing? This is my opportunity for spiritual growth. God has given me an opportunity for spiritual growth, and therefore I'm grateful to the divine for giving me this situation in which I'm suffering. This suffering was necessary for me, for my spiritual growth.
Thank you, sir. So, participants, just wanted to share that this and many other talks from Yes channel are available on our YouTube channel. I'm also sharing the link of this channel in the chat box. So you could visit this, and today's talk will also be available in a short span of 1 or 2 days. So thank you everyone for being here today. And thank you, sir, for enlightening us with such um, songs of the divine, songs of Bhagwan. We would like to wrap our session with a moment of silence, and we will be very delighted to invite you next month for our second Adhyay. Thank you so much for being here today.